I was chipping a rare gem out of a cave wall in the Amazon rainforest when a tribe dropped down from the surface, circling me with daggers pointed at my chest. I threw my hands up, my heart hammering. My father spent his whole life hunting this gem and never found it, and now I had to make it out alive with this gem to complete his dying wish. I pulled out my phone and showed them a picture of the gem, hoping they'd let me go, but they started screaming in a language I couldn't understand and jabbing their daggers at my face like I offended them. "I'm just here for the gem, I swear." But two warriors ripped my backpack off my shoulders. "No, my gear, my samples." Then they slammed me to the ground as their shaman lifted my father's rare gem into a beam of light, glowing, shifting from milky white to deep violet, and the whole tribe dropped to their knees. That's when I realized they worshipped the stone because it glowed. So I dropped to my knees too and bowed at the gem, praying it would save me. But they all looked at me with disgust, yanking me up by my hair, furious that an outsider dared bow to their god. I begged, but they dragged me out of the cave, through the forest, and into their village, where a stone altar sat stacked with kindling. They forced me to my knees on top of it and tossed my backpack onto the pile beside me. When they raised their torches, it hit me. They were going to burn me alive, and I'd die without ever completing my father's wish. The torches dropped, and flames roared up around my knees. Then I remembered how their gem glowed, and it gave me the craziest idea. My UV flashlight could make my own stone samples glow the exact same way. So I lunged for the bag with shaking hands, and the tribe roared, shoving their torches into the kindling and pressing their daggers against my back. I grabbed the flashlight and a fistful of stones anyway, and swept the light over them as the flames climbed higher. They glowed and shifted from white to violet, the same glow as their god, and the whole tribe froze, then dropped to their knees in worship. Not for the stone this time, but for me, their new rock god. They doused the flames and pressed their sacred gem into my hands as a peace offering. My father never found it, while I walked out a rock god holding it. Our priest raised his hand halfway through my vows, pressed a finger to my forehead, and yelled, "Tag, you're it." Then he immediately hiked up his robe and sprinted down the aisle. 200 guests spun around while my bride stood there holding her bouquet with her mouth wide open in disbelief. I kissed her hand and said, "Hold that thought, I have a priest to catch." I ran after him but slipped over the carpet in the aisle, so I desperately yelled, "Stop running and let me tag you back." I saw him slide under the buffet table and build a huge lead, so I vaulted over it but brought down a whole tray of shrimp. He cut through the string quartet and turned around to face me, holding the cello like a shield. I faked left, but he read it and swished past me, bursting out the venue doors into the parking lot. He ran past the cars and onto the concrete, but I was too far to catch up. I turned my head and spotted our wedding getaway car sitting there with cans tied to the bumper, so I jumped in behind the wheel without a second thought. 200 guests crowded the venue windows behind me as I gunned it across the parking lot after the priest. He glanced back at my car closing in with widening eyes, so he cut back toward the parking lot and dove into our limo and closed the door right as I skidded up beside it. He smiled and waved goodbye at me through the glass thinking he was safe, but the partition inside was up, which meant he couldn't see the front seat, and our limo driver was sitting there with a confused expression. So I traded the driver the rose on my suit for his cap and his keys, and slipped behind the wheel. The priest was fixing his hair when I slid the partition down, revealing me sitting there with a huge smile. I reached back and pressed one finger to his forehead. "Tag, you're it." His scream did not sound holy at all. We drove back to the altar and finished our vows, while the bride stood there with the same expression of disbelief. My girlfriend silenced the whole party, then yelled, "My boyfriend can freestyle," knowing I couldn't. Everyone's heads turned to me as she grinned. She'd hated my love of music since forever. The night before, I was working on beats at 2 a.m. in my home studio, bopping to the rhythm. But just as I stood up excited to show her what I'd created, Chelsea yanked the power cord. "Your music dream is nonsense. Get a real job. This will never work out." She stormed out, while I sat there looking at my music posters, almost crying because Chelsea never supported my dreams. But when we came to the party, my jaw instantly dropped. B Twizzy was right there holding a red cup. He came from our town, but had recently started blowing up, and I had his whole album in my playlist. I told Chelsea, "I'm gonna show him my music." She shook her head. "That's stupid." But I was already walking towards him, my knees trembling because I knew this was my chance to make it big. But just as I tapped his shoulder, Chelsea cut the music. "Everybody stop. My boyfriend can freestyle." She grinned right at me, and my chest went cold with anxiety. She knew I couldn't freestyle, and I realized I was trying to embarrass me in front of B Twizzy, so I'd ruin my chance. I didn't know what to say, but B Twizzy slapped my shoulder. "I love freestylers, dude. Let's see what you got." Everyone cheered, and I gulped and started rapping whatever came to my head, praying it would be good. But 3 words in, I stuttered. The whole crowd instantly died and turned around, pretending they didn't just see that. B Twizzy turned around too, and I glared at Chelsea, my cheeks red in embarrassment as she laughed. "I told you this music stuff was nonsense." She went to play her music again, but then something in me snapped. "I don't freestyle," I yelled to the whole room. "My girlfriend only said I did to embarrass me. She's ashamed that I make music and wants me to quit music." I pulled out my phone and and connected one of my tracks to the speakers. These are my beats. B. Twizzy's head instantly started bopping, and slowly the whole room nodded along with him. Chelsea went pale as B. Twizzy spun to her. "This is dope. Why are you being a hater to your own boyfriend?" Chelsea's cheeks flushed red with shame as she literally ran out from embarrassment. I went to follow her, but B. Twizzy threw his arm around me. "Dump the hater, man. Let's go hit the studio." I walked out with him while the beats Chelsea called nonsense played over the party speakers. Dad walked into the kitchen holding a dying clearance plant and gently stroked one of its brown leaves. The cashier said it probably won't make it, but I think we can prove him wrong. I stared at the plant, waiting for him to admit this was a joke, while Mom laughed as dirt fell onto the groceries. "Throw that thing away." Dad carried it to the kitchen, moved the fruit bowl to the floor, and set the plant in its place on the counter in front of the window. Then he fed it 2 spoonfuls of water. "That thing's name is Kevin, and nobody touches him until he's stable." By the next morning, Mom tried to slide Kevin away from the window, while Dad was asleep on the couch. His head snapped up at the scrape of the pot. "He's not ready." She let go, but the weakest leaf shook so hard, my little brother gasped. I let out a sigh of relief once it settled, then hated that I cared about this ugly plant Dad had somehow made part of the family. That afternoon, Mom tried to put the fruit bowl back on the counter, but Kevin's grow light was still plugged in where it belonged. She bumped the cord with her elbow, and my brother grabbed the pot with both hands. "Mom, no, he's still unstable." Mom stared at all 3 of us crowded around one brown plant. "This thing gets the window, the light, and now bodyguards?" The timer beeped. Dad lifted the spray bottle, and my brother leaned in to count every mist. Mom looked at her dinner plate glowing under Kevin's lamp. "Either the plant goes, or I do." Dad unplugged the grow light, picked up Kevin's pot, and tucked the spray bottle under his arm. "Fine, we'll move to the garage." Mom froze. "We?" Dad grabbed a pillow off the couch, but my little brother blocked the door. "He's still weak." I stepped beside him. "The garage gets cold." Mom scoffed and pointed at the window. "Fine, put him back. But tomorrow, the fruit bowl comes off the floor." Dad set Kevin under the light, and my brother leaned over the pot. Wait, curled against the dirt was one tiny green leaf that hadn't been there before. Dad covered his mouth. My brother whispered, "Kevin had a baby." The weak leaf didn't tremble. It stood on its own. Kevin was finally stable. My professor pushed my finished final back across his desk because I was 2 minutes late. "I'm giving you a 0 because you were late. But this final was worth 70% of our grade, and my parents would kill me if I failed." So I twisted my face and leaned in. "Do you know who I am, bro?" He crossed his arms. "No, and I don't care who your daddy is either." I straightened my back and smirked because he'd just told me everything I needed. I calmly told him, "You can't give me an F, bro." He shook his head and kept stacking the 200 other finals. I leaned down to his ear. "So you seriously don't know who I am?" He stopped mid-stack, and doubt crawled across his face, like maybe I was somebody he was supposed to know. "Who are you?" "That's a really bad answer, bro." That's when I ripped the stack out of his arms and launched everything into the air, my test included. It was raining finals. He dropped to his knees, screaming, "Why would you do that? You can't give me an F if you can't find me, bro." I smiled from ear to ear, because since he didn't know who I was, he couldn't find my name out of 200 identical papers. I walked out through the falling pages while he crawled around grabbing at them. My cell door opened, and a man I swear I recognized walked inside. "This is Terrence, your new cellie." The guard locked the door. I looked at Terrence again, and my eyes went wide with rage. He was the man who killed my mother 3 years ago. I still remember coming home and seeing her on the kitchen floor as he leapt out our back window. My whole body trembled as I tapped his shoulder. "Remember me?" Terrence squinted, then clutched his belly, laughing. "Of course I do. I still remember how your mom screamed. Did it hurt coming home and seeing her lifeless on the floor?" I saw red, and my fists curled in rage. But just as I was about to swing, Terrence backed up. "You lay one finger on me and I'm snitching. Your sentence will be extended for violence." He hopped on his bunk carelessly, and my stomach turned because I knew he was right. I couldn't touch him, or he'd tell, and any hope I had of freedom would be gone. I climbed into bed and clutched Mom's old necklace, but Terrence bent down. "She wore that when I killed her, right?" His laugh made me see red, but there was nothing I could do. Until one night Terrence woke me up. "Here's a secret. Your mom wasn't the only one," he whispered. "I have a parole hearing coming up. If I get out, there'll be many more after her." My chest went cold, and I realized I had to stop him. I told the guards what I heard, but they shook their heads saying that's not enough proof to refuse his parole hearing. So while on yard, I picked up the phone and made one call to my friends outside. The next time we got mail, I made sure Terrence was looking when I opened mine. He was still smiling, asking if my mom had sent me a letter for Mother's Day, but his face dropped once he saw what I was holding, a picture of his brother tied up. I smiled at him. "Now, should my friends treat your brother like you treated my mom?" Terrence's face turned ghost white and he started trembling. "Don't touch my brother. We'll see," I interrupted him. "I'm making a phone call to my buddies tomorrow. Your brother's life depends on what I say." I laid back on my bed and watched as Terrence dropped to his knees, begging me, but I didn't say a word to the rest of the day. At night, I heard him crying from fear above me, and that's when I climbed up. "When guards ask you tomorrow what happened to you, you're gonna say you tripped and fell. Then you'll ask to be transferred. Got it?" I pulled out my socks, stuffed with frozen butter and started laying into Terrence before he could respond. I didn't stop until the sounds of his bones breaking stopped too. When guards opened our cell in the morning and saw him lying on the ground, purple and swollen and unable to move, Terrence spoke first. "I tripped and fell," he wheezed out. "I had a new cellie that afternoon, and Terrence was too injured to attend his parole hearing. This was for you, Mom. The train I was riding nearly took a man's hand off as it blew past the station where it was supposed to stop. This was the 5th stop in a row the train missed. Not only that, it was picking up speed. Something was wrong. People on the train started to panic and children started to cry. I looked at the subway map. We only had 5 more stops before the end of the line, and if we couldn't stop, it would be the end of everyone on the train too. I checked the doors and windows, all locked. The only way out was an emergency exit hatch on the ceiling. I scrambled up to the train's roof. It was my only option if I wanted to make it to the driver's car in the front. The train shot down the track like a bullet, and the wind blowing in my face made it almost impossible to keep my balance. I made my way to the front, facing death with every step. I could hear the screams getting louder in the train cars below me. When I made it to the front, I found the conductor slumped over the controls inside. I checked his pulse. Nothing. He was gone. I looked up from the driver's corpse and out the front window. In the distance was the dead end of the last stop, and we were closing in, fast. Just then, I heard a voice shouting from an overhead radio. "Train 27, what the hell's going on in there?" I grabbed the radio. "This is Train 27, our driver is dead. Tell me how to stop this thing." The radio crackled back. "The emergency brake, look for a giant red button." I found the button, but it was locked behind a plastic box with a keyhole under it. I looked out the window again. We were maybe 30 seconds away from death. The radio started crackling again, but the signal was breaking up. I could only make out the words, key, box, belt. I looked back down at the dead driver. There it was, a small silver key hung on his belt. I ripped it off, unlocked the box, and hit the button. The train came to a dead stop with only inches of track left. Everyone else on board was shaken, but still alive. I took my son to the carnival for his birthday, and when I asked what he wanted, his answer wasn't what I expected. With a huge smile, he said, "To save people, Dad." I kissed him on the forehead for being a sweet kid, but then a scream ripped through the crowd. Above us, the Ferris wheel burst into flames, and everyone erupted into chaos as fire rained down on us. I grabbed for my son's hand to run, but the stampede slammed into us and ripped him away from me. I screamed his name, spinning in every direction, but all I could see was smoke and fire. An alarm blared through the smoke, and as I ran, my foot caught on something. My son's little jacket, trampled and singed. My heart slammed as I snatched it up and shoved my phone in every face I passed. "Have you seen this boy? Please, I need to find my son." No one stopped. They just streamed past me toward the exits guided by firefighters. Then a firefighter's voice tore through the smoke. "Everyone out now! The Ferris wheel's about to collapse." But a woman grabbed my arm and pointed toward the flames. "That boy? He ran that way, screaming at everyone." My whole body shook. If it collapsed, it'd kill him, so I ran straight toward it. The heat seared my skin, but I didn't stop until the Ferris wheel buckled and crashed down around me. A beam slammed across my legs, and I screamed as the flames burned through my sleeve into my arm. I dropped against the ground, sobbing. My son had wished to save people, and I couldn't even save him. My vision blurred, then I felt hands clamp around me and pull me through the smoke. Firefighters laid me on the grass and strapped an oxygen mask over my face as I cried, certain my son was gone. But then, through the haze, I saw a small figure in a firefighter's jacket walking toward me. "Dad!" I thought I was hallucinating, until my son dropped to his knees beside me, safe, an oversized firefighter suit swallowing his body. A firefighter knelt next to him and gripped his shoulder. "Your son pulled the fire alarm and helped us evacuate everyone. He even told us you'd still be inside looking for him. He didn't get ripped away from the crowd. He left to save everyone." My son beamed at me. "My wish came true, Dad. Best birthday ever." An old woman stormed up to my work crush and threw her groceries onto the conveyor belt. $7 for eggs? Why is this so expensive?" Zoe scanned them without blinking. "I don't set the prices, ma'am." The woman leaned over the belt. "Change the price, or I start screaming." I puffed out my chest and swaggered over, because this was my chance to show her I was a masculine man. But 4 steps in, a customer grabbed my arm. "Where are your freaking bread loaves? I've been looking for freaking ever. Actually, can you just walk me there?" I sighed, and while I led her there, I heard a crash by the checkout lane. I spun around, and the woman was jumping up and down having a tantrum, and my manager was jogging over to the crime scene. I shoved a baguette at the customer and ran to save my queen. When I finally reached her, the woman was talking to my manager. "Your cashier called me a hag and threw my eggs on the ground." I gasped because she was lying, and Zoe's jaw dropped. "I never touched her eggs." My manager turned to Zoe. "Can anyone confirm your side of the story?" I raised my hand to defend my lady. "I watched the whole thing, start to finish. Zoe is innocent." The woman's mouth fell open, and my manager put his hands on his hips. Yeah, right. As if I'd believe you, the one who has a crush on her. We all know it. Zoe blushed, and I turned red. But before I could respond, my manager turned to the woman. Corporate policy. The customer's word is final, so I will take action on whatever version of the story you give me. I clenched my fists, because I knew I had to do something fast. I pointed at the woman and lied. She threw the groceries at Zoe's head and slapped her until she fell to the floor. Her head snapped around. Lies. I just knocked the eggs down. That's it. I grinned because my plan had worked perfectly, and my manager folded her arms. So you destroyed your own eggs and blamed my cashier. You need to leave. She screamed while security marched her out the door, and Zoe laughed. There's the scream she promised me. I laughed and she kept going. So, you came from the bread aisle, then walked to where I was. My ears went hot. How did you know where I was the whole time? She giggled. Same way you know where I am every shift. I like you too, dumma. My best friend John pointed at a wasp nest and said, Tom Brady moment. If you hit the nest, I'll give you $50. Then my other friend Ivan slammed his hand on the table. Double it. I'm in. We tiptoed over to inspect it, and up close it was like two basketballs hanging off a tree branch. Easily the biggest nest I'd ever seen. John scooped up the football and said, hit it and make it inside without getting stung, then tossed me the ball. I stood there staring at it, because $100 for one throw and a sprint was easy money. But when I looked back, they were both already crouched behind the patio chairs, and something felt off. If this went wrong, nothing was stopping them from locking me out. I lined up my throw, but a single wasp buzzed past my ear, and I dropped the ball like it was on fire, and both of them fell out laughing behind the chairs. I picked it back up, wiped my hands on my shorts, took a breath, and nailed the nest dead center. It hit the grass, and the sky turned into a black cloud, so I took off for the door. But when I looked back to check the swarm, I plowed straight into both of them, and all three of us ate grass. I scrambled up first, shoved them back down, and dove inside, locking the door behind me. If anyone was getting locked out today, it wasn't gonna be me. They slammed against the glass, screaming, "Open the door!" while the swarm caught up, and they danced around swatting at their own heads. I gave them 3 seconds, then flipped the lock, and they fell inside, slapping wasps off each other. John was on the floor, crying, laughing because Ivan got stung right on the butt. I held out my hand and said, I did my dare. Pay up. And they each slapped a 50 into my palm. I walked into the doctor's office for a sore leg, but the second he saw me, he decided I needed surgery. I got wheeled away with no explanation and was put under while still asking questions. I woke up 10 hours later and saw 4 police officers standing around my bed. I tried to move, and that's when I noticed I was handcuffed to the railing. The doctor who prescribed the surgery was standing in the corner tapping his foot. I freaked out. What's going on? And the lead detective walked over and pulled out an x-ray taken of my stomach during surgery. I turned to the doctor. Why were you operating on my stomach? I have leg pain. He looked around frantically, but the detective immediately shoved the photo in my face. A small rectangle was at my spleen. Your surgeon found this sewn into your abdominal lining. The detective held up a huge bag of fentanyl, 130 grams, a trafficking charge carrying a 20-year sentence. My jaw dropped. I've never touched drugs in my life. The detective rolled his eyes, but that's when the surgeon jumped in completely unprompted. Just arrest him already. The evidence is clear. I looked at his red face and the sweat on his forehead and wondered why he looked so nervous. The detectives pulled out handcuffs, but that's when I remembered something. I'd had an x-ray on my stomach last week at a different hospital. There was nothing in my body then. But as soon as I said this, the surgeon snapped up. X-rays aren't reliable, he shouted. They probably missed it. The detective looked at the surgeon carefully, then back over at me. We're taking you in. They uncuffed me and cuffed my hands behind my back. At the station, they kept asking about drugs. I kept telling them I didn't know. And after 5 hours, a prosecutor told me they were filing charges tomorrow. I was looking at 20 years minimum. I didn't sleep at all. And the next morning, the detective who arrested me walked in. He unlocked my cell and placed a binder in front of me. I opened them, expecting to see the charges. Instead, it was official papers telling me I was free to go if I signed here. I did it immediately, asking him why I was free all of a sudden, and that's when he showed me his phone. Surveillance footage from my surgery, showing my doctor stitching the bag of fentanyl into my abdomen, but also a GPS tracker. The cartel was after him because he has their fentanyl, so he stitched it in you and put a tracker there to lead them astray. I suggest getting it removed immediately. I went to a Marriott ballroom for econ extra credit and ended up running from a man in a 3-piece suit calling himself Maximus Masters. Noah signed our names on the extra credit sheet and pushed open the doors. Free steak and a grade bump? I'd sit through my own funeral for that. A woman in a navy blazer was on us before the doors swung shut. Welcome, future entrepreneurs. I'm Crystal. She slapped name tags on our chests that read Guest of Honor and steered us to the front row with a hand on each of our backs. Where's the bar? Noah asked. After the presentation, Crystal sang and disappeared into the crowd. 60 people sat around us, wearing the same wide smile, staring at an empty stage. Nobody was talking. I don't don't see anyone from our class, Noah whispered. Maybe we're early. Dude, the room is full. The lights cut out and techno music shook the floor. 2 fog machines fired smoke across the stage, and a man in a 3-piece suit walked through it with his arms over his head. Who wants to be financially free? The room exploded as people shot out of their seats, pumping fists. We didn't move. Is this extra credit or a hostage situation? Noah whispered. For 40 minutes, Maximus paced the stage, ranting about yachts and cellular metabolism powder. Slide after slide behind him of him holding stacks of cash. A guy 2 rows back stood up sobbing about how he used to work at Subway. It's a pyramid scheme, Noah said. I nodded and started to stand, but Crystal materialized behind us. Leaving? You haven't seen the compensation structure. She pressed down on my shoulder. Sit. We sat. When it finally ended, she pulled out an iPad and asked which package spoke to us. We're just here for class credit, I told her. Her smile cracked. You're scared of success. People like us retire at 30. The whole room turned to watch. Maximus walked over, sweat soaking through his collar, and put a hand on each of our shoulders. Gentlemen, let me introduce you to the man who changed my life. The fog machines kicked on again. An older man in a white suit stepped through the smoke onto the stage. Noah's hand clamped around my forearm. Dude, that's our prof. Professor Jacobson smiled at me from the stage. The same wide smile Crystal had. The same smile the Subway guy had. The same smile every single person in that room had been wearing since we sat down. He tapped the microphone twice. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's talk about your extra credit. We ran. I was closing our McDonald's when a guy built like a delivery truck started pounding on the glass. I cracked the door to say, "We're closed, buddy. Come back tomorrow." But he walked straight through me into the lobby and yelled his order at the empty store. "Get me 10 burgers, 7 fries, and 5 Coke Zero." I tried pushing him back out. "Buddy, the grill is turned off. Come back tomorrow." But he pushed me back, and I went flying over the counter. Then he grabbed the counter with both hands, and something metal on his wrist clacked against it. "You don't understand. I will die without my burgers." My limbs trembled and I backed toward the kitchen. But he followed me and yelled his order again. 10 burgers, 7 fries, 5 Coke Zero. But then my manager stepped out from behind the grill. He was part-time Mr. Olympia and a full head bigger than the guy. He walked up until they were chest to chest and glared at the customer. "We're closed. Get out or I'll throw you out." But the guy didn't move. "My burgers. Give me my burgers or I'll die." My manager backed him all the way into the glass and he was still begging for the food. And that's when I noticed he was sweating through his shirt in a cold lobby. His hands shook so hard the metal band on his wrist rattled against the glass. So I thought to myself, nobody begs for food like this unless something's truly wrong. That's when the big guy took 3 huge breaths and just dropped. He slammed onto the floor and cracked our tiles and our manager gasped. I ran over and knelt down to check on him, and I finally noticed what was on his wrist. It was a medical bracelet with the words, "Need daily burgers. Feed me if I pass out." I couldn't believe his words about dying if he didn't get his burgers were actually true. So I grabbed a half-eaten burger from a nearby table and shoved it down his mouth. Then I opened my phone and dialed 911 while my manager fired up the grill behind me and started making those 10 burgers, 7 fries, and 5 Coke Zero. I was swinging from a tree branch, enjoying the breeze, when a rock hit my hands and I slipped off. The neighbor's kid Wharton was smirking with a handful of stones. "If you want to climb trees like a monkey, I'll treat you like one." He hurled another rock and hit my jaw before I could react. I screamed, "Ow!" and instantly stood up, then started climbing the tree to protect myself because Wharton was 3 years older. He yelled, "Come down, monkey!" and his rocks kept hitting my legs. But when I reached the top, I was too high for him to hit me. I laughed, seeing every rock fall short, and Wharton's face got redder with each stone he missed. But then suddenly, he smiled. He dropped the rocks and ran away, and my stomach turned because I knew he was planning something. Just as I started climbing down, I saw Wharton come back with a chainsaw. He yanked the cord, and the blades immediately started spinning. "If you love the tree so much, you can come down with it." He started cutting the trunk before I could react, and I felt the whole tree start shaking under me as the blades whirred. I gripped the branches in fear because this was a 70-foot fall, and I screamed at Wharton to stop. He laughed, "You're about to crash, monkey," and pushed the blades deeper. The trunk cracked and started tilting while I was still holding onto the top leaves. There were no bushes to fall into, so I knew I was dead. But then I saw a tree just close enough to leap. So as my tree fell, I jumped. I flew through the air and smacked into the trunk, hugging it with everything I had. I looked down and saw Wharton clenching his jaw, angry I'd survived. But he was so focused on me, he forgot about the falling tree. He looked up and saw the entire thing crash on him with the loudest thud. I looked at his legs sticking out from underneath, his chainsaw still buzzing in the grass, and knew Wharton will never throw a stone at me again, or at anything to be honest. A kid from school dumped maple syrup over my Canadian jersey. "That's what you get, maple syrup boy." The entire street turned to laugh, and I buried my head in my hands because I couldn't take being bullied for being Canadian anymore. I grabbed the 4th of July festival poster from the lamppost. "Person with the most American spirit wins." I knew I had to win. That night, I ordered the 20-piece chicken nugget meal with a large milkshake to prepare to be as American as possible. I'd start every morning with a big gulp from 7-Eleven, and every evening I'd force myself to turn off the hockey game and watch football instead. But when I woke up on competition day, part of me knew it still wasn't enough to win. I threw on my flag shirt, grabbed a Dunkin' for the road and drove off with no plan. But halfway there, something huge on a fence post made me slam the brakes. It was a bald eagle, staring at me like I owed it money. "You're not from here, maple syrup boy," I gasped, because I didn't know America had talking eagles. "What the?" The bald eagle stretched a wing toward its back. "Yes, this isn't Canada anymore. Unlike your ugly mooses, us eagles can actually speak. Hop on." I climbed on, and we shot into the sky. When we came down over the festival, and the eagle dropped me on stage, the mayor didn't even take a vote. "You win! Of course you win!" The whole town screamed so loud I felt it in my chest, and my neighbor was chanting my name instead of maple syrup boy. So I threw my arms up and screamed the most American thing I could think of. USA! During my son's birthday party, my wife grabbed my arm. "Did you hire a clown?" I quickly said, "No, I didn't hire a clown." "Why?" My wife looked scared and pointed. I looked over and saw a clown was walking my son and 3 other kids into the back of a van. I sprinted over. "Hey, what are you doing? Get away from my kids!" The kids were laughing in the back of the van, thinking this was a game. The clown turned around and smiled creepily. "These kids aren't going home today, and it's your fault." My blood went cold. "What do you mean it's my fault? Who are you?" He reached up and wiped the makeup off his face. "Remember me? 4th grade." My chest tightened because I knew exactly who he was. He was my best friend in elementary school. One day, he started messing with a lighter behind our school and accidentally set the whole building on fire. When the cops questioned me, I told the truth, and he went to juvie. "You snitched on me and ruined my entire life. You got to grow up. Birthday parties, a wife, kids. I got a cell and a criminal record before I turned 11. He's been holding a grudge for years, and now he was getting me back for it." I looked at my son in the back of the van laughing, thinking this was a game. "So here's what's going to happen." He pulled out a lighter and shoved it into my chest. "You're going to burn your house down, right now, or I'm taking these kids, and they aren't coming back." My hands were shaking. I looked at my wife, hoping she'd think of something quick. I saw her quickly pull out her phone and dial 911. I took the lighter like I didn't notice. "Fine, I'll do it." I gripped the lighter and started walking toward my house. I could feel him breathing down my neck, following me. But I was also walking towards the other side of the house, so he'd walk away from the van. I glanced at my wife. She nodded. The second he was far enough from the van, my wife and 2 friends sprinted to the van and grabbed every kid out. He heard the commotion and spun around. "What the?" Bang! I swung the lighter across his face as hard as I could. He stumbled back holding his cheek. Then we heard sirens coming down the street. He looked at the cop cars and tried to run, but his oversized clown shoes caught each other, and he fell flat on his face. The cops cuffed him on my front lawn. The kids started clapping and cheering. "Best clown ever, Daddy." I walked into class wearing my brand new hearing aids, and the teacher instantly slammed her marker down. "Are you wearing earphones in my class? Take them off before I do." I calmly told her they were hearing aids. "Today is the first day I can hear my friends' voices." But she looked at me over her glasses and scoffed. "That's the worst excuse I've heard in 20 years. But I literally can't hear without them." That's when she reached down and ripped one straight out of my ear. I cried out and grabbed my head in pain, but she just dropped my hearing aid on her desk and kept writing on the board like nothing happened. I pressed my hand over my empty ear as my head started ringing. Then she called on me from across the room, but her face got red when I didn't respond. So she marched over and grabbed my shoulder from behind. I flinched so hard my desk tipped over. The whole class went dead quiet, and she pushed her glasses up her nose. "Stop acting in my class, or I'll send you to the principal and have you suspended." The whole class went dead quiet, and she pushed her glasses up her nose, then picked up her phone and dialed my mom. "You need to come get your son. He's faking a disability for attention." 10 minutes later, my mom walked in through the door and looked right at my ear that was missing the hearing aid. She whipped her head and saw it sitting on the teacher's desk. So she calmly walked over to the teacher and plucked the glasses right off her face. The teacher panicked and grabbed at the air. "Wait, I literally can't see without those." Mom smiled. "That's the worst excuse I've heard in 20 years. She fitted my hearing aid back in, took my hand, and walked me out. And the last thing I heard was the teacher bumping into her own desk. I finished my 500th push-up and stood up, finally ready to beat my dad. I walked into the kitchen and saw him at the head of the table, and Mom flinched as she set down his plate. His face twisted the second he took a bite. "Not enough salt." He immediately slapped her. She fell to the floor, locking eyes with me in tears. But Dad just stood up and leaned over her, clenching his fists. "What did I tell you about learning to cook?" He went to swing at her, but I jumped in and pushed him off, my heart pounding. I screamed, "Get off her, Dad. I'm challenging you to an arm wrestle. If you lose, you're not the strongest man in this house, and you leave me and Mom forever." He instantly started laughing. "You think you can beat me? Remember the last time you tried and lost? I whooped you afterward so bad you couldn't sit for a week." He sat in his chair and slammed his elbow on the table, opening his hand with a grin. My heart pounded, but I sat across from him and gripped his hand. My whole arm tensed, and I locked eyes with Mom. "I got us." We started, and his hand pushed against mine, but I grit my teeth and pushed back, thinking of all my training. And suddenly, I felt his arm give. The smile disappeared disappeared from his face, and he strained so hard he went red, but his hand was now inches from the table. Mom covered her mouth, but just as I was about to give the final push to win, Dad reached his free hand out and grabbed the knife off the table. He pressed the tip against my neck. "Are you sure you want to win?" My blood instantly ran cold as the sharp metal rested against my carotid artery. The fight drained out of my arm, and I let his hand drive mine down into the table. I instantly stood up, backing away from the knife as my whole body shook, hugging Mom, who was also shaking. Dad set the knife down and leaned back in his chair. "You're gonna have to kill me to get rid of me." He went back to eating, and that's when I grabbed the knife and drove it into his chest. I was getting rid of him. I was at the mall on a first date, browsing the jewelry store, when the security alarms started blaring and cops circled around me. "We know you're stealing, kid." I froze, already shaking because I'd spent a month working up the nerve to ask her out, and now I looked like a criminal. "But I didn't take anything." "Who said that?" The cop pointed across the store. "That guy." I gasped. There stood her ex-boyfriend Victor, arms crossed. He yelled, "I watched him from over here. He slipped a ring right into his pocket. Arrest him." I knew he was trying to sabotage my date, and I had to prove it before they hauled me out in cuffs. The cops leaned in closer, but the girl grabbed my arm. "You didn't take anything, right? I don't date criminals." I shook my head fast, but Victor cut in. "Cops, check his back pocket." My cheeks clenched as a cop reached into my back pocket, certain Victor was bluffing, but he pulled out a sparkling diamond ring with a $10,000 price tag. I panicked. "No, no, no! I don't know how that got there." The girl put her hands over her mouth and stepped back as Victor swooped in and slid his arm around her with a smirk. "What a loser. I would never steal anything. I would just buy you a diamond ring myself." The store owner stormed over, red-faced. "That's an exclusive $10,000 ring. I want him arrested for shoplifting now." A cop yanked my arms behind me, cuffs clicking cold around my tiny wrists, and as they dragged me past Victor, he leaned in and whispered, "That was too easy. Enjoy jail, loser." They started dragging me towards the exit, and I knew I needed to say something before my life was over. So I dug my heels in and screamed, "Wait! I know he framed me. He put that ring in my pocket." The cops didn't believe me and kept pushing, so I yelled, "How did he know it was in my back pocket if he saw me from all the way across the store?" Victor's smirk dropped. The cops stopped, turned, and stared at him. "Don't look at me! He's the thief!" throwing his hands up. But as his arms flew up, a diamond ring tumbled out of his sleeve and bounced across the floor, its price tag still attached. The whole store went silent, and then the cops lunged, cuffing Victor as he screamed that he didn't do it. The cuffs clicked off my wrists, and I could finally breathe as the girl stepped over the ring on the floor. That was hot. "When's our next date?" I was sitting alone in class when I noticed the hamster cage was hanging wide open. The weird kid Dex had taken Peanut out of her cage and was squeezing her in his fist. He grinned at me. "You're the hamster monitor for today, right? It's your job to keep this thing safe." I nodded at him. Then he said it out loud, so there'd be no confusion. "Class policy says whoever loses her walks the whole school in their underwear." I gasped, because he was right. I needed to get Peanut back into her cage before the rest of the class returned from lunch, or I'd be stuck in my underwear while everyone laughed at me. I told him to put her back, but he stepped up on a desk where I couldn't reach. I lunged anyway, and he swung her out over the aisle. Her legs dangled in the air, and she screamed for help. So I stopped grabbing and started begging, "Dex, please let her down. Peanut is pregnant with 3 little hamster babies." But his smirk just got even bigger. He held the hamster over his open mouth. I wonder how a hamster tastes. I froze and thought Peanut's fate was to be eaten by this gremlin. But that's when the door swung wide open. Lunch had ended, and every student had returned, only to see Dex holding the class hamster over his open mouth. The teacher screamed, "Dex, what are you doing?" And it was so loud that Dex accidentally dropped the hamster. Peanut flipped in the air and landed right inside Dex's open mouth. Everyone's jaw dropped, and I screamed, "No!" Dex started choking hard. His foot slid off the desk, but as he hit the floor, Peanut popped out of his mouth like a vending machine. I dove forward and caught her in both hands, soaked but kicking and alive. I carefully set her back in the nest and clicked the latch, safe and sound. But then she curled up and clenched her stomach. "Wait, Peanut is giving birth." The whole class stampeded over Dex to crowd the glass and watched Peanut pump out 3 cute babies. The next day, Dex walked in his underwear while everyone laughed and took pictures. The school bully kicked down a 6'9" freshman, and when his tray fell, he picked up the spaghetti and squeezed it over his head. The best part about this is you can't do crap about it, Giraffe. But this freshman towered over him and said, "What did you just say to me?" The entire cafeteria went silent because no one had ever stood up to Logan. Logan smirked. "Be careful what you say next, circus freak. My dad practically owns this school." But the new kid just smirked. "Oh yeah, what's his name?" He puffed his chest out. "John Donaldson." The new kid chuckled. "His boss's name is Liam McManus, right?" "I know because that's my dad's name." For a second, Logan didn't say anything, and all of us had our mouths wide open because no one had ever seen him be quiet before. The new kid leaned in and whispered, "By the way, my dad says yours is a little bitch, like father, like son." He suddenly went red with anger and started crashing out. "How effing dare you!" The kid's hand closed over Logan's whole head, and he lifted him in the air like it was nothing. Logan started kicking at nothing. "Put me down!" The new kid smiled, and while still carrying Logan, he crouched down to the tray of spaghetti on the floor, picked it up, and smeared it on Logan's face. Logan kept kicking while being suspended in the air, and his sweatpants fell to his ankles to reveal SpongeBob boxers. Every kid Logan had ever bullied was now laughing at him with their phones out. The new kid smiled. "The best part about this is you can't do crap about it, little man. I was on a public bus with my daughter when a man in a black ski mask stood up, pointed a gun at all of us, and screamed, 'Everybody put your phones in the bag, now!' I yanked my daughter against my chest, ready to do anything to keep her safe. But my teenage daughter clutched her phone in its bulky pink case to her chest, shaking her head. 'I can't live without my phone, Dad. I'm not giving it to him.' My heart stopped. I grabbed her arm and begged, 'Your life is worth more than a phone. You have to give it to him.' But I knew how stubborn she was, and I was terrified she'd get herself killed. The robber stormed down the aisle, shoving his bag in each row, and phones dropped in one by one. But a man near the front clutched his phone and shook his head. 'No, bruh. My whole life's on this thing.' The robber grabbed his collar, but the man swung back, and they slammed into the seats, the gun swinging wildly as they grappled. 'You're going to get us all killed!' someone screamed from the back. Then a shot cracked through the bus, the bullet punching a hole through the roof, and everyone ducked. I threw myself over my daughter, shielding her with my body, but underneath me, I felt her hands moving frantically over her phone like she was protecting it, and my heart sank because I knew she was still refusing to give it up. 'Please,' I begged into her ear, 'just hand it over. I can't lose you.' Then sirens wailed in the distance, and the robber's head snapped toward the window, his grip on the gun tightening as he ripped the fighting man's phone away and stormed toward us. The gun swung toward my daughter. 'Phone in the bag, now!' I was bracing for the worst, but my daughter slowly lifted her bright pink phone and dropped it into his bag. Relief crashed over me as the sirens screamed closer, and the robber bolted for the door, but he didn't make it 3 steps before cops tackled him to the pavement. But then my daughter grabbed my arm. 'Dad, look!' She opened her palm, and there sat her phone, glowing, out of its bright pink case. I gave him the empty pink case, Dad. I've been texting 911 while you were shielding me. My jaw dropped, because the phone she swore she couldn't live without was the only reason any of us were still breathing.
তুকো ওই কিং হ্যান্ডেল লইয়া মাঠে যা যা যাস না।
আচ্ছা তুমি যাও না, খাওনটা বারো জানোস না, জানতে হইব তো। রিকশাটা লো, সাইকেলটা লো বেটা আগে।
হবে না। আর আমি বুঝলাম না, এই দুনিয়াতে এত জায়গা থাকতে আমার বাড়ির
সময় আহুক, দেখবি মনের কথা সব ভরভর করে কয়ে দিব।
বাসা ভাই তো রাসেল ভাইকে বারান্দায় টিভি বিছিয়ে রাখছে, আমরা সবাই মিলে ওখানে সিনেমা দেখতে যেতেছি, আমি ওই দিক যেতেছিলাম।
कभी कभी जीतने के लिए कुछ हारना भी पड़ता है। हार का जीतने वाले
বাসা ভাই একদম ফাটাই দিচ্ছেন। সিনেমা আর কি দেখবো, আপনাকে দেখে মনে হচ্ছে চোখের সামনে শাহরুখ খান ডায়লগ দিচ্ছে।
টাকাতে নষ্ট করস তুই সিনেমা টিভি দেখছ।
तुमने तो कहा था कि तुम्हारे पापा के सामने ये एक
আম্মা ছাড়ো।
এই বাচ্চা বাচ্চা
হুডন
এই বাচ্চা
কথা কইছো, আমি কিন্তু বাড়িতে ওই বন্ধ করে দিব। আমি জামুগা।
আব্বা রে, ও আব্বা তুকো ওই কিং হ্যান্ডেল লইয়া মাঠে যা যা যাস না।
আচ্ছা তুমি যাও না, খাওনটা বারো।
শোনা,
तुम नहीं समझोगे प्रिया।
আপনার হাতটা একটু ধরবো?
আমার হাত?
আর তোমার?
হ্যাঁ বিলেতি নায়ক হইব এই
মতো পুরা
চোখটাও নষ্ট হয়ে গেছে ঘরে চল ঘরে চল চোখটা নষ্ট হয়ে গেছে চল
শোনো, তোমার এই পোলা গ্রামের 8-10টা বাদাইম্মা পোলার মতো না। আমার কিন্তু গ্রামে শুনছি, জিনিসটা আমলে রাখলাম, কইলেই তো রয়ে যায় না।
আচ্ছা এখন ওই
ভুইকা গেছে।
কি আজব না বিষয়টা?
না না, আজব হইব কেন? আপনি আমার বস।
ভাই তুমি আজকে মনের কথাটা কয়ে দিলে
দেখছো কিং খান, প্রিয়া আমারে ভুল বুঝলো। কত শালার কপাল।
কবিতার পাতা ছুঁয়ে মন জন পড়ে না পলো সন্ধে আকাশ।
গেলাম। প্রথম প্রথম তো শাহরুখ খানের মতো হিরোইজম দেখাইছেন, আর এখন মনের কথা বলছি।
কিন্তু নিজে জীবনে প্রথম একটা মেয়ের প্রেমে পড়ছি খান। কিন্তু আমার কোনদিন আমি কিং খান।
আমিও প্রথম প্রেমে পড়ছি।
কবিতার পাতা ছুঁয়ে মন জনকি বেলা।
মায়ের হাতের রান্না কিন্তু আমার মা তো দিয়েছিলেন। শাহরুখের প্রত্যেকটা কি সমস্যা?